to protein structure prediction and drug discovery, researchers are increasingly turning to artificial intelligence to address complex problems in biology. Celebrating AI as an emerging concept and tool in biology, Birla Industrial and Technological Museum, a unit of National Council of Science Museums, Ministry of Culture, Government of India, warmly welcomes you to the interactive session Use of AI in Bioscience. We are privileged to have with us a stalwart of the field, Professor Shekhar Mande, former DG CSIR and Chairman Governing Body NCSM. We look forward to learning from you, sir. We also have with us our distinguished guest, Shri Arijit Datta Chaudhuri, Director General, National Council of Science Museums. I welcome to the podium Director BITM, Shri Arnab Chatterjee, to please deliver his welcome address.
Respected Monday sir, respected Director General sir, uh, teachers present here, and my dear students. A very warm welcome to BITM Kolkata once again, and hope you have already have got a touch of the topic that we are going to discuss today. Uh, as you all know, AI, if you go by the copybook definition, it is said that it is the ability of a machine to demonstrate features of human intelligence. What does it mean? Suppose you are standing in front of a traffic light and you get to see whether it's green, red, or yellow. We can decide that in a fraction of a second without any further effort, right? But how it would be if we ask a machine, a computer, or per se a mobile phone that we carry in our pocket to decide whether the signal is green, red, or yellow. So once we can make that happen, it is called perceiving the surrounding. And if a machine can perceive what is going on around it, it is one of an example of AI, and to be very precise, it is image processing. There are several such fields related to AI which are boosting the research and development all across the globe every day in recent times. And starting from going through a number of literatures, number of publications in a just snapshot, to modeling some solutions, it has immense potential, and we are yet to explore the much of it. What we get to see right now, or what we get to use, is just the tip of the iceberg. If you just do one small experimentation, once you go back home, you take a cell phone from anyone, or if you have one, and there is chat gpt. We know all of that, right? So there are many others like the Gemini, there are a number of them. So if you just go to any one of these generative transformers, they're called generative transformers. So if you just go to any one of them, one of those pages, and just type how I can make a machine see colors and do the research. I mean, don't go for a common prompt, go for a research prompt, and you'll get to see what kind of amazing responses it can produce. So starting from that to a number of things that we can we can explore with the help of AI. I won't like to stand in between you and today's distinguished speaker. So I hope you're going to have a very fruitful session ahead. Thank you.
Sir. To delve into the nuances of AI in bioscience and learn what this excitement is all about, we have with us a master of the field. Let us welcome with a big round of applause our distinguished speaker for the day, Professor Shekhar Mande. Professor Mande is a structural and computational biologist, distinguished professor, Bioinformatics Center, Savitribhai Phule, Pune University, and chairman, governing body, National Council of Science Museums. He was the Director General of the Council of Scientific and Industrial Research, India, and the Secretary of the Department of Scientific and Industrial Research, Ministry of Science and Technology. Prior to this, he was the Director of National Center for Cell Science, Pune. He was awarded in 2005 the Shanti Swarup Bhatnagar Prize for Science and Technology, the highest science award in India in the biological sciences. Let us welcome Professor Shekhar Mande to the podium. He'll be speaking on use of AI in bioscience. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Aditi, for the kind words. If you can have these lights off, no? Thank you all very much for being here. Uh, I was requested by Dr. Arijit Datta Chaudhary that whether I can come and talk to students, and it's always a pleasure to be among students. So thank you for organizing this talk, both of you. Uh, all the students understand English, or you prefer me to speak in Hindi or Bengali? English is fine. Great, chalo. I am quite used to giving talks in different languages. So if you feel that you are not understanding something, just stop me and I can switch over different languages. All right. Now, what I've thought I should share my excitement in the field of AI and especially applications in the areas of biology. Right? And as Aditi very correctly said in the opening comments, that biology is an extremely complex field, and we know that artificial intelligence is now doing more and more and more complex things in general. Right? So that's what I thought I will tell you. But there might be questions for both AI and biosciences. So what we will do, we'll first look at both the things independently, and towards the end, we will actually see how AI can start addressing problems of biology. Uh, how many of you here have heard the word AI for the first time, or have you all of you have heard it earlier? Anyone here who has heard AI for the first time? Anyone can tell me what you think AI is about? What is artificial intelligence? Whatever you understand of artificial intelligence, is artificial and is intelligence, right? We need artificial intelligence because we are losing natural intelligence. I mean, that's one definition. But what is artificial intelligence in general? Anyone? Any? Yeah, please. Yes, that's true. In a machine, correct? Anyone else would like to add to that? Uh, what do humans perceive the world as? Through which organs? What are the sensory organs? Different kinds of sensory organs? Eyes, ears, nose, tongue. Five of them, right? And some people also have sixth sense. Okay, some people claim they have sixth sense, right? So that also is something interesting. Now, essentially, AI is kind of covers all of this. That how a machine would sense something either through one of the signals that what humans see through these five sensory organs and make sense out of it and do something which is beyond that. You know, when intelligence is something what we do beyond that, right? And we just don't understand what is happening, but we can also create something new. There's intelligence, right? I mean, we can write a new poem, for example, or we can do something better than what the world around is what we are perceived as. and that would come through an intelligent activity. So that's what essentially artificial intelligence would mean in a sense. So before we go to artificial intelligence, we should actually look at briefly how the scientific thought itself has evolved in the last 500-600 years. All right, and the scientific method itself, the way we have evolved is that prior to about 16th century, a lot of people were doing observations and experiments and things like that. We were just watching everything around us and trying to understand why things are like that. So planets, when they move, why the planets move in one direction, the sun rises in the east and sets in the west, why does it happen, or on what particular day a planet is likely to be there, and so on and so forth. They were the observations. There are many Indians, for example, Aryabhatta, Madhava, they made phenomenal contributions in trying to understand things around us by just simply observing them, right? And if you look at, for example, the modern astronomy, there are people like Tycho Brahe. I don't know how many of you have heard the name Tycho Brahe. They made lots of observations about how planets and stars were moving in the sky every day, right? So they made notes of that every day. But that did not give us any particular laws. They were only observations. And the laws, scientific laws, started coming beyond the observations. And one of the first laws that actually came here when we started making laws was in this particular era, and was in fact turned out was based on the observations made by Tycho Brahe. Right? Tycho Brahe had mapped the positions of planets day after day, year after year in the sky, how different planets move in the sky. And one of the most complicated problem, he gave it to a student called Kepler. Right? All of you have heard Kepler's laws. How many of you have Kepler's laws in your textbooks? Kepler's laws of planetary motions? Maybe it will come in standard 11, is it? Yeah. All right. So Kepler and Brahe did not get along. Brahe actually wanted to give him something which he cannot do. So Tycho Brahe was his boss, and because he did not like Kepler, he asked him to work on a problem. And then Kepler came with one of the first scientific laws, what we call as Kepler's planetary motions, in which the planets move around the sun in elliptic orbit. And he could actually count that how many days every planet would take to go around and what kind of elliptic orbit, what is the major axis, what is the minor axis, and so on and so forth, that he could come up. More recently, last 50 years, we have also begun trying to simulate things. Right? I mean, we have been given very powerful computers. Nowadays, of course, computers are being replaced by mobile phones. And on this, we can start gaming or actually simulate things. You know, in fact, when we started flying aeroplanes, we could not have flown aeroplanes unless we had simulated them on a computer. On a computer, you imagine that some object can fly. And when an object flies, how the aerodynamic works, right? I mean, how much air that goes below, how much air that goes up, and how do you get a thrust so that it can go up in the sky? All of that has to be calculated and simulated, right, on a computer. So that all happened because of computer simulations. The way we send rockets in the space, have you heard of Chandrayaan 2? It landed on the moon, right? How Chandrayaan would go in the space, right? Before doing experiment, we had to predict how that experiment would work. We had to predict. And all of that was done on a computer. A simulation that how that rocket would go up, how it would orbit the moon, and then slowly land on the moon surface. It was not done by trial and error. We don't have as much money to do trial and error, right? First time we send, it has to be successful. And that's what we did. We first calculated everything on computer. We calculated all the payloads, the speed that it will go up, how much fuel is required, at what stage which rocket will fall down. All of that was first done on a computer. In front of a computer screen, you do change the parameters, and then computer tells you that change this parameter, and eventually when we design actual rocket, all those parameters went into the design of the rocket. They were the simulations, right? So this is the phase that we started in about 50 years ago. But now, in the last 20 years or so, we have now come to a stage in which we realize that we can do computer simulations. We realize that there are large number of things that we have collected, observations we have collected, what Tycho Brahe did in the 15th century. We have done much, much more at a much larger scale. We have collected observations from all around us. And therefore, now we are in a position to say that we can predict certain things to a much better accuracy than something. And in fact, we can now start imagining that we can also create things new which were not known to human beings. That would eventually what we call as generative AI. Have you heard about generative AI? Something new that we are going to generate which we had never observed or which we had never thought that we could do that. So that's the thing that we are going to do. And that's the origin of the word artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence. That you answered correctly, that what we do. So I've taken a few slides from Professor M. Vidyasagar's talk. Professor M. Vidyasagar is a very famous computer scientist in India, one of the best known computer scientists in India. He's a good friend. So he gave this talk some time ago to a body of United Nations. About 68 member countries were there in an audience like this. And I requested him to give me the slides. So he gave me this definition, he says, and I'll just read out what the definition, what he thought was correct. And there are many definitions. There is no universally accepted definition, but we'll just read this. It says artificial intelligence, AI, refers to the technology of enabling computers to perform tasks that had previously been difficult for machines, though quite easy for humans. Creating things, creating poetry, creating drama, creating new pieces of art, paintings, music, all of this, if it's possible, we can create through computers. Now, this is different than purely number crunching. We know that computers can crunch numbers. I give you examples of flying aeroplanes and all, and that is done through simulations of flying, and that is purely number crunching. Right? We can do multiple multiplications, additions, subtractions, divisions at a very fast scale. We can do millions of them in less than a second on a computer. Right? That is different. Right? A simple calculation is different, artificial intelligence is different. So this excludes pure numerical computations, but includes tasks such as image and speech recognition, game playing, and heuristic reasoning. Something like that is what he said. Now, machine learning is typically sometimes confused with AI. Have you heard of the word machine learning? All of you have heard the word machine learning? Right? We teach machines to actually learn and predict some things. Right? So it's different than AI. Right? AI is not the same as machine learning. So machine learning is a set of algorithms that enables computers to realize that dream that computers can be very human-like. Artificial intelligence is making computers human-like, think human-like. And machine learning enables computers to do that. Right? So we write computer programs through algorithms and all, and that's a set of computations that we do, which is applied to a large data to achieve a specific objective. In other words, AI is the destination of the journey, whereas ML is the path towards that journey. So AI and ML are not to be confused with each other. Right? Machine learning is a set of algorithms that we do, and some of the early machine learnings, believe it or not, happened. Where would you think that some of the very early developments in 1940s or 1950s in machine learning would have begun with? In which geography of the world? In India, if I say, in which place in India? If I say Calcutta, where in Calcutta? So there's a place called Indian Statistical Institute, right? All of you have heard of Indian Statistical Institute? ISI? There's a Dunlop, what is it called? Dunlop Bridge, right? We're close to Dunlop. Have you seen in Calcutta? How many people have seen Dunlop here? Oh, you have not? Only one person knows where is ISI. Anyway, only two people know. So there's an institute called Indian Statistical Institute, and there's a very famous person called C.R. Rao there. And C.R. Rao was the first person, one of the first persons, to actually analyze data from multiple sources, what we call as multiple variables, right? When you have, let us say you have given two variables, right, x and y, all right, any two variables, and you are asked what is the relationship between them, you try to fit in a straight line. Have you tried to do this? Two variables and you try to fit a straight line, and you get an equation of the straight line. What is that equation that you get? Y is equal to, no, no, not 0. Y is equal to mx plus c. Have you heard this? Something like that, right? So where x and y are two variables, right? And then we are trying to fit in the equation in which there will be a straight line and there will be some relationship between x and y. But instead of x and y, I have 100 such variables. How do you try to fit some equation into these variables? That's called multivariate statistics, and that essentially early multivariate statistics were developed in Calcutta by C.R. Rao, in the 1940s and 50s and so on and so forth. Anyway, so the phrase of artificial intelligence was coined in Stanford University by Professor John McCarthy in 1955, and he conceived the idea that computers can be used to process non-numerical data with the advent of computers such as ENIAC, which eventually became DEC and VAX and so on and so forth later. And using computers to mimic human reasoning was his dream. That can we actually have a computer which can think, behave, and act like a human being. Right? That's what he said. And the first AI systems were therefore rule-based, expert-based system, and based on logic and all. And they were essentially used for medical diagnosis and fault detection and engineering systems and so on and so forth. So that's what the first things were. But as we go along, people realize that human brain works in a particular fashion. Right? Human brain, what it does, it gathers information about the world around us. We see, we hear, we smell, we taste, we get a perception of touch. All of that human brain can actually do, synthesize that information, and very quickly react to that. Right? That's what human brain does. We want computer to do that. Right? So sense that we get about the world is what we would like computer to do. Right? For example, all of you are aware that we see the world in 3 dimensions. Do we see the world in 2 dimensions or 3 dimensions? How will you prove that? If I were to ask you to prove that we can see the world in 3 dimensions and not in 2 dimensions, how will you prove it? Let us do it right now. Okay, all of you close your one eye. Okay, close one eye, not both the eyes. Put a finger like this. Ahead, straight. Now take the other finger and show me whether you can actually put them together on the tip. No trial and error in the first go. How many of you could do it first go? No, you are lying. Now open both the eyes and try to do it. How many can you do it quickly? With both the eyes. That both the eyes together give you sense of depth. So when both the eyes are open, you saw it in 3 dimensions. You knew which thing was behind and which thing was in front. One eye doesn't give you that. Right? One eye alone, it doesn't tell you which thing is in front and which thing is in the back. This could have been in front and this in back, or it could have been this way. And your brain therefore was confused when you are trying to put this together. That's what we call a stereo vision. Right? That's how the brain works. Brain can gather this kind of senses and it can synthesize the entire thing just like what you're hearing in stereo. If somebody is speaking from that direction, you will see there. If somebody is speaking from this direction, you will see there. And that's a stereo that you actually generate. Right? And the stereo comes because you have 2 organs which are placed separately and the 3-dimensional image is constructed in the brain. Both the eyes see 2 different images. One eye sees this image, other eye sees this image. So when I am seeing with this eye, I see this part of the finger. When I am seeing from this eye, my left eye, I see this part of the finger. Brain merges these 2 images together and then reconstructs a 3-dimensional thing. How does brain do it? Right? Isn't it a marvel that brain does it? Isn't that a miracle? You agree or you disagree? All right. So, the way brain does it is brain has about 100 billion neurons here. 100 billion. How much is a billion? No. How much is a billion? How many zeros in front of one? A billion, billion. 9 zeros in front of one. And 100 and 9 zeros in front of 100. So many number of neurons in the brain, they're cells. And they are connected to all our sensory organs in the body. All these neurons. And they're collecting information about the world continuously. As we speak here, they're collecting information all the time. And that information is carried here, is synthesized together, and that's how you make sense out of it. Right? At this moment, what you are doing is you are seeing me, that information is being gathered by your brain, and you are hearing me, that information is being gathered by your brain, and the brain eventually synthesizes that information. We want computers to do the same thing. So, early days, what people did, they generated a network of neurons on a computer, something like this, right? So now these are not 100 billion neurons. They're only about a few hundred neurons on a computer. And each neuron receives a signal from the input, right? So this is the input. Input is a sensory organ. Either you're seeing or hearing or tasting or something like that. And that information is passed through a network through multiple layers of neurons here, just like the neurons in my brain. And then this together make a sense out of it and gives an output. Output could be a color or the sense of depth, what we did the experiment just now, or if you hear something or something like that. Now this in the initial years was called as artificial neural network. Neurons and a network of neurons is a neural network. And this is actually the beginning of the modern AI. Alright, modern artificial intelligence begins from here, that when we started these artificial neural networks, they were called artificial neural networks to distinguish them from human brain, which is a natural neural network. And currently, what we use in the last few years, we have started using something called a deep neural network. Deep learning is part of that, and deep neural network is multiple layers. So hundreds of such layers together would be deep. In artificial neural network, there could be only about 2 to 4 layers. So you see one layer here, another layer here, another layer here. Whereas a deep neural network, there could be multiple. Hundreds of such layers is a deep neural network. So this is the kind of thing that what we want the computers to do, right? To have our thing on this thing. So as I told you, it was John McCarthy who did this particular one. Now, there are many different examples of AI. They're not restricted to only speech recognition or things like that. But we can also do the early applications of AIs were doing translation from text to text or speech to speech. Right? I mean, if I speak in English, it would do translation in Bengali, or if I write in Bengali, it would do translation in English, and so on and so forth. So that were the early applications of AI. But it cannot capture mood. I mean, if I say it something very strongly, right? It cannot capture that mood in a translation, simple translation, something like that. It was good for business contract. If I want to give you a document and I say that this document is in English or in Spanish, you don't understand Spanish, you go to some language translator, it translates into English and gives you, as simple as that. But it's not for poetry. A Spanish poetry, even if it is converted to English poetry, you will not get the same meaning. And it can actually produce very hilarious result if you do a translation, right? So try to translate a steel plant, let us say Jamshedpur steel plant, into Hindi. It will tell you lohe ka pauda Jamshedpur mein. So translators are like that. So it doesn't capture that meaning behind it, right? So that were the early applications of translation. It doesn't actually give you what you mean to do that, all right? So in the next phase of AI, people started wondering whether can we start playing games on computers, right? In the 1990s, it was thought that we can start playing actually games. And the first of the games that people thought we could play was chess, right? Can we make computer play chess? All right, and then IBM at that time developed a series of computers called Deep Blue, and it started playing chess, and it was fairly advanced. So first time it played with Garry Kasparov, who was then the world champion in chess, right, in 1990s, but then computer lost. The Deep Blue one lost to Garry Kasparov. So that was a failure for artificial intelligence, that computer cannot play as good as human beings. But that was only momentary. In 2 years, IBM came up with Deep Blue 2 and with twice as many computers and defeated Kasparov. And on today's date, no world champion can beat computer in a game of chess. Computers have become so powerful that no human being can beat computer in a game of chess on today's date. They're so powerful they have become now. All right. And then later on, they started playing Jeopardy, and then there's another game called Go. There's a very complicated game called Go, and there was a Korean person who was a champion of Go. And then Google actually came up with an algorithm called AlphaGo to play the game of Go. And for the first time in 2015, he defeated Lee Sedol, a Korean person who was a champion of Go. And he was the top-ranking player called KG in 2017. So even in Go, which is one of the most complicated games, we could teach computers how to play that particular game, and he could start beating the world champions on that. And then, of course, Alpha Zero and other things. So it started actually doing much more intelligent, and then computers have become so intelligent now that we can think that computers can help us driving a car on the road without a driver. Can you believe it? A car can be driven on a road without hitting anyone, following all the traffic rules, going from point A to point B without a driver. You just sit behind and relax. You can sleep in the car on the back seat, and the car drives you to the destination. And that's what we are actually trying the computers to do. We are trying to make them more and more intelligent in that particular sense. And as some sort of a culmination, I wouldn't say culmination because the field is still evolving, as a start of recognition of that, last year's Nobel Prize in physics was given to two gentlemen, somebody called John Hopfield and somebody called Geoffrey Hinton, for developing these artificial neural networks. That's the first recognition that the scientific community has now given that the field has developed so well that they have been recognized with Nobel Prize now. You have heard of Nobel Prize, all of you? India's first science Nobel Prize went to a person. Where did he work? The first time an Indian won Nobel Prize in physics was in 1930. Chandrasekhar? Where did he work? Raman effect. Where did he work? Which place did he work? Where? IICS, right? Indian Institute of Cultivation of Science, Jadavpur. Right? So C.V. Raman worked there for his work at it. When he discovered Raman effect, he was working there. Afterward, of course, he moved there. But last year's Nobel Prize were given to Hopfield and Hinton for the discovery of artificial neural networks. And citation said, for foundational discoveries and inventions that enable machine learning with artificial neural networks. And they trained artificial neural networks using the laws of physics. The learning, what we do, as I explained to you, how we do deep learning and things like that, was done using this. But that was not the end. Not only physics. As luck would have it, even the chemistry Nobel Prize went for artificial neural networks. So not only physics, even the chemistry people gave Nobel Prize to AI. And the people, essentially Demis Hassabis and John Jumper, they got Nobel Prize because they applied artificial intelligence to one of the very outstanding problems on what is called as the protein folding problem. Right? I will not go into details of protein folding. A bit complicated to explain. I don't know whether you have heard of proteins, molecules called proteins. They are linear polymers, but they are not linear. They actually take a globular shape, and each polymer takes a specified shape. And we don't know, billions of such polymers exist, and each one of them have billions of unique shapes. How do you predict from a polymer the shape of it? Was problem that these people solved, and they got Nobel Prize in chemistry. Right? And both of them work for Google. So this is how actually the field of AI has evolved in the last few years. And AI is developing, as I said, it's continuously developing, and large kind of advancement are being taken happening in the field of AI. And all of you would have heard things like generative AI and things like that. How many of you have worked? How many of you have used ChatGPT? Has anyone used ChatGPT? I think this side people have used. This side people have not used ChatGPT. All right. So what did you use ChatGPT for? For writing your answer sheets, is it? For projects, okay, okay, yeah, yeah. Oh, okay. Your teachers are in the audience, isn't it? So I did an exercise. I myself used ChatGPT, and I asked ChatGPT, please tell me what is generative AI. And not only I did that, I mean, you read this here, and then you will know. I asked a more specific question to ChatGPT. So ChatGPT told me, the concept of generative artificial intelligence is a symphony of algorithms and intellect, a digital maestro orchestrating the harmonious creation of novel content. In the grand tapestry of artificial intelligence, the generative variant stands as a virtuoso, capable of composing an opus of text, images, or even other media, exhibiting unparalleled prowess of creativity. I actually asked ChatGPT to give me an answer in Shashi Tharoor style, and that's what ChatGPT did. So I tell him, so try doing this exercise and give it to your teacher next time when you're not going to school, saying that please give me a leave letter that I can give to my teacher in a Shashi Tharoor style. Right? So it will give a very nice letter. It will come with a poem and it will actually give you an answer like that. So this is the answer I got from ChatGPT. So that's about AI. Now let us look at a little bit of biosciences. All right, and then we'll try to see how AI can help in biosciences. Right. Now, when we began, Aditi had already told you about complexity of biosciences. Now, biosciences is essentially understanding the world around us, or more specifically about living systems. Now, here we see number of living and non-living systems. All right. So, if you can help me identifying which are living and which are non-living, what are these? How do you characterize living and non-living? Because your answers were correct. So how do you characterize them? I mean, what are the properties of living things that tell you that these are living things and not non-living? One by one, one by one, one by one, one by one. So that, yeah. Response to stimuli, number one. Breath, yeah, okay. Respiration and breath is one and the same thing. Grow, yes. Reproduction, yes. So if I take crystals, crystals grow. Are crystals living or non-living? Uh, Movement, water moves from one place to another. Is water living or non-living? So the answers that you are given are right, but it's a combination of all of them. Right? So all of these are right answers, but living things have everything combined together. Right? Metabolism, breathing, ability to take nutrition, ability to grow, ability to reproduce. These are all characteristics of living things. And living things are so complex. They are so complex that we don't understand how they are make up, and the laws of physics and chemistry, how do they apply to them. All the scientists believe that in the end, laws of physics and chemistry would be applicable to anything that you see. That's the belief that all of us have. But when we come to living systems, we yet don't know. For example, we are a body, right? Whole body. The body is made up of multiple organs. My body has lungs, it has heart, it has brain, it has eyes, but all together makes my body. Each organ is made up of different kinds of cells. These are my neurons, these are my red blood cells, this is my skin cells, and so on and so forth. In each cell, there are hundreds and thousands and millions of molecules, like the double helix or the proteins and things like that. Each molecule is made up of complex atoms and together, and they're all immersed in water, right? And the water molecule itself is made up of atoms and protons and neutrons and so on and so forth. It's a harmony of all of this together. All the atoms and molecules and cells and organs and all, our body is eventually a manifestation of that harmony. And if a single thing can go wrong in the body, right? Something that goes on in the body in this harmony, as I said, or in the symphony of all the organs together, things can go terribly wrong, right? Suppose I lose control over my growing height. I can grow very height, like Khali, right? I mean, he lost control over height, so he became very tall, right? Or people can become very fat if you lose control. So body knows how to control it, right? And that's exactly what is the harmony between different cells, between different organs, and at the molecules. But how do they do it? We ask ourselves, what is the thing that we actually do, and we don't actually know how we do it. So to do that, we try to look at different entities that make up our body. As I said, atoms, molecules, different kinds of molecules, small organisms like viruses, or small parasites like paramecium. And then we actually start growing in size, human being, an elephant, a tree like sequoia, and so on and so forth, like that. But one of the most beautiful things to think of is that all of us in this room, no exception, no exception in 8 billion people that live in the world, we all started our life with one cell. This is what we look like, right? So your age must be about close to 14, 15, all of you. 15 years ago, you were here, right? When you began your life, you were one single cell. That became 2, it became 4. In about 20 days, you look like this. In about a month, you look like this. In about little bit more than a month, you look like this. In about 2 months, you started looking like this. All of us, no exceptions, right? And by then, by the time we came here, we have actually 1 trillion cells in our body. How many? 1 trillion. 1 trillion will be how many zeros in front of 1? Billion was 9. Yeah, trillion is 12, right? 12 zeros in front of 1. So many number of cells. 14 years ago, you were a single cell, right? And now, by the time you came into this audience, that single cell has become trillion cells, right? Not only trillion cells. While this division was happening between different cells, some cells knew that they would become liver. Some cells knew that they were going to become heart. Some cells knew that they were going to become muscles. So it was all pre-programmed. That programming did not go wrong. If it had gone wrong, I would have 4 hands right now and I would have 2 heads. It didn't go that wrong, right? Some people may think that things are right, but I mean, yeah. So all of that actually happened in a marvelous symphony of everything that was happening, and we don't know how it happened. On today's date, we don't know how this thing happened, and if we lose control on that harmony, things can go wrong. But in the process, it also happened that all of a sudden we realize that we look like our parents, right? So I give you an example here. There is a husband and wife couple. You may or may not know them, and these are the 2 sons. And you see how similar are they looking to their father and mother, aren't they? Right? So probably you don't know who these people are. They are people of my generation. I will show you at least this, you know who they are, right? Now, all the children look like their father or mother. And if they don't, people actually look at like them. Why it doesn't look like his father or mother? You know? So, that's marvelous. And that's because half of our genetic material we got from our father, half of our genetic material we got from our mother, right? And that's eventually made us like our fathers and mothers, right? If your mother is short-tempered, you are likely to be short-tempered yourselves. If your father is a real cool guy, you are likely to be a cool person yourself. You know, I mean, that's also we actually inherited from our fathers and mothers and things like that. And then we have about 1 trillion cells, but it doesn't end there. We have about 10 to 100 trillion, right? 10 times more number of cells which are not of our own origin. We have about a trillion cells of our own. That one cell became 2, 2 became 4, 4 became 8. Like that it became a trillion. But during the process, we also gathered cells which are not our own. And that were the bacteria and viruses that were living around us. They started living on our body. And at 10 times more on our body, for every person in this room, there are 10 times more cells of bacteria and viruses than our own cells. Right? And that's what we call as microbiome. Right? The human microbiome. So we are not we alone. We are a conglomeration of all multiple different kinds of things. And that manifests itself in every aspect of our life. The way we digest our food, the way we think, the way we develop different diseases, it manifests as a harmony or an orchestra between all the cells that we have, our own cells and the microbial cells. So things can go wrong everywhere. Now coming back, as I said, computers today can beat any player in chess, computer can beat anyone in Go. Can computer create a human being? A completely new human being a computer can make? Okay, human being is very complicated because a trillion cells. Let us say a single bacterium, single cell bacterium. Can computer make a single cell bacterium? A very simple cell bacterium. Computer cannot make it. So we actually don't understand the complexity of biology. And that's where AI now would start moving towards. Can we use the principles of artificial intelligence in towards that? And in the process, we both learn from each other. AI learns from biology, for example, neural networks, simulation of human intelligence, and data analysis, and so on and so forth. Biology learns from AI using new AI models and so on and so forth. And together we think that we can have a real impact on the world of health, agriculture, environment, and so on and so forth. So, on today's date, we have gathered so much data about different things in biology, a large amount of data, trillions and trillions of data sets that we have gathered, just like what Tycho Brahe had gathered 400-500 years ago. We have gathered much, much more information about different biological systems at the cellular level, at the molecular level, at the organismal level. At every level, we have actually gathered information about biological systems, whether it be plants, whether it be animals, whether it be insects, whether it be humans. We have been gathering information all along, last 100 years. And it is all stored in multiple different databases. And what we want to try to do is that we want to actually see whether this information can be used for a particular thing. So somebody was asked a question that can we use generative AI to analyze biological data? And the answer somewhere here, I don't want to read that. So what I want to read is the last line. So we are trying to directly learn the language of biological systems from raw biological measurements and data without any human interpretation in between. That's our fond hope for future, and that's exactly what we are trying to do. So in the end, what we are moving towards on today's date, AI has become a very powerful tool. We saw Nobel Prizes last year were given in physics and chemistry for applications of AI. It has become so powerful that we hope that it can start addressing problems of biology and help us understand ourselves. On today's date, we don't understand ourselves, how we react, how we behave in a society, right? For example, when you're sitting in an auditorium like this, your mobile should always be off, correct? You saw an example of that just now, right? So it distracts everyone. So how did we learn that? A computer on today's date is very difficult to learn those kind of things. Right? How do we behave in a society? How do we react as emotions? Right? When we have emotions of certain things, computer doesn't have emotions. All of that is what we believe computer can do one day. All right. So what we believe is that artificial intelligence and its impact on bioscience is growing. In the coming time, we will see a lot of development in healthcare, particularly diagnostics and medical images and things like that. Already it is making an impact. If you give a computer a chest X-ray, it can tell you in about literally a fraction of a second what that X-ray is likely to be, what disorder that X-ray has. Of course, it has to be, once again, vetted by a qualified physician, But nonetheless, the job of the physician is made much easier, because the physician, when it looks at the chest X-ray, takes a couple of minutes to look at the X-ray and come up to the diagnosis. But if the computer diagnosis is already presented to the physician can say this right or wrong. We can make new drugs or vaccines. We can predict the next pandemic, just like COVID pandemic. What was there? Can we predict the pandemic of tomorrow using artificial intelligence? And indeed, we hope that we should be able to do that. Our agricultural productivity, when our soil is degenerating, where the rainfall is very haphazard, can we do that? Can we improve our biodiversity and environment and so on and so forth? All these are areas in which has started making some kind of an impact. And of course, on the climate change, there's one of the largest problems that we are seeing today, and the role of the living systems in the climate change. Living systems, I'm including bacteria, fungi, viruses, plants, everything. All of them, what kind of impact do they have on climate? And we do hope that AI will make some impact in trying to understand all of that. And that responsibility of how do we go ahead is for your generation. My generation of people have brought the field up to here. When you get into science, your generation hopefully will start actually making progress in some of these areas. Okay? And I'm going to live for at least another 20 years, I hope. So I will see some of you making those contributions in that areas. Thank you.
If you would like to ask questions, you are free to ask, but time is limited, so we'll take only a few of them. So anyone would like to ask questions?
Good morning, sir. Sir, we all know that AI is known to make mistakes quite often, and in a sensitive field as sensitive as bioscience, if AI does make mistakes, what can be done about it?
So AI does make mistakes. There's a very common problem what we call as hallucination. The ChatGPT is very easy to make it hallucinate. Try to do an experiment. It's a very interesting experiment. Ask certain questions to ChatGPT and lead it to give you a wrong answer. Okay, it's not very difficult to do that. You have to be just ingenious to think what you do. Okay, and there are many people who try to do that. People like you actually try to do that, and the answers are hilarious. What eventually ChatGPT gives is that. Now the question is, indeed, if it gives the wrong answer, what do you do? And if something which is as important as a diagnosis in a medical disorder, then it's very important that we give the correct diagnosis and not a wrong diagnosis. If you tell a person that you have a particular disease and that person does not have that disease, is all right. But if you tell a person you don't have that disease and the person has the disease, then you have made a very grave error. Correct? So they're the kind of mistakes that we would like to avoid, and that's why you still need human interventions in all of that. So AI in conjunction with human interventions is what is there correctly. But hopefully in the coming time, the number of mistakes that AI makes would be less and less. People have recognized the problem of hallucination in generative AI. People are working on those. And there have been some very, very hilarious examples of how generative AI works. And if you are interested, you can try it yourself. Make machine give you a wrong answer, false answer. And it's not very difficult to do that. I've done it myself. Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Anybody else? Any question? You are free to ask the question to sir. Yes.
Good morning, sir. So, I would like to ask if there can be a point where AI can take over for humans.
That's what the doomsday people actually say, that AI could be so much more powerful that it can take over human race, but it's unlikely. On today's date, I don't think it's possible. Some people do say that it's possible, but at least on today's date, the kind of complex things that I showed you are so complex, like creating emotions and things like that. It's unlikely that computers will eventually overtake humans on those.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
Time is short, so we'll end our session here. And I'll ask one of our colleague, Sri Torun Das, to give the vote of thanks.
On behalf of BHM, it's indeed my proud privilege to extend a heartfelt vote of thanks as we conclude today's enlightening session. First and foremost, I extend my heartfelt thanks and deep appreciation to our esteemed speaker, Professor Shekhar Simantisa, former Director General CSIR, awardee of Santishwara Bhatnagar Prize for Science and Technology, Chairman Governing Body NCSN, for sparing his valuable time to be with us today and for delivering such an inspiring and enlightening session. His talk beautifully highlighted the evolving landscape of artificial intelligence and its impactful role in bioscience. Sir, your clarity of thought, your depth of knowledge, and your passion for science have deeply inspired every listener today. Sir, we are truly honored by your presence and your generosity in sharing such valuable insights. I also take opportunity to sincerely thank to our Director General of NCSM, Sri Arijit Datta Chaudhary sir, for his constant support and vision that help us to organize events like this to foster scientific awareness among the youth. I also take this opportunity to sincerely thank the school's teachers who have guided and accompanied the students here today. Your commitment to nurturing scientific curiosity among young minds is truly commendable. A special thanks to all our young and curious participants whose enthusiasm and inquisitiveness added energy and relevance to this session. You are the torchbearers of our scientific future. I express our sincere gratitude to all the media persons, both from the print and electronic platforms, for covering this event and helping us take this message of science and learning to a wider audience. We're thankful to our director, Sri Arnab Chaudhary sir, whose overall guidance made this event successful. I thank also all the people who attended this session virtually. Many thanks to my colleagues of BITM who have made this event possible. Thank you once again and have a wonderful day ahead. Thank you so much. Students, please be seated. And there is an announcement that the coupons given here